So we're going to begin a practical practice. I want to think of this, and we're going to start with a cobbler's pose, focusing on the core vine, the hips, the low back care, and we're of course going to shift into some breath, some breath rituals in these shapes, like how we focus on the side abdominals and the posterior core. But the beginning is the front spaces, okay, in this pathway. So I use this in my book, The Awake Pathway. This is the beginning shape. And so you want to build a ramp for your spine. So just have a blanket or towel rolled up at the bottom, a bolster lengthwise up. And then I think it's really important to have a blanket on the top for your cervical spine support. If you feel like you want to go a little further with the stretch of the front of the core land, you could slide it off and just see, because none of us want to have more of this round with our neck. We want more extension. So you can play with it, but just keep the blanket an easy reach to put back there. Okay. So let's take a belt. We're going to buckle up. So we got a loop, first things first, and I want you to sit in all the way next to the short edge of the bolster. So your sacrum is touching to it. And then as you have that loop, just bring the soles of the feet together. Reach the belt over the tops of the feet so they are going to be pulled a little bit together. And the parts that pull need to have the support first. So you've got your blocks under your thighs. If you have a ball, a therapy ball, put it off to the side yard, and a sandbag is ready to sand on you in a moment. So make sure that the belt's not twisted at the back. It can be twisted in the front, but not at the back. And as you tighten it up, the buckle should be an easy reach in case you want to get out, you have an emergency, but also you want to feel like you can pull and tighten it, because as you recline, you might notice that the belt either feels tighter on some spots on the side band. It might feel that you want to pull the feet closer in. Yeah, I like to kind of survey the situation. Think of each pose as I'm going to survey how it feels. So I really like the feel of the feet just when they're together. For right now, I'm going to let my feet kind of tilt up because I have the back body in this tilt, and my foot body, I'll think of it as a unifoot because they're connected. Instead of trying to push them down, I'm just going to let them kind of float up a little bit, because circulation in these areas is always the same as we tread on the feet, we push into them the same directions. So shift it around, and that's just a perspective. Okay. So have a sandbag if you've got one. You can put it on several different zones in the rib spaces. It could be across, and it could be from heart to the belly. And mine tends to feel more comfortable heart to belly. I don't like the feel that it's going to fall off of me or slide down to my belly. So I don't mind it touching to that zone. I just have to kind of get that sand. So the most pressure is close to that core. Kind of think of that as the front of your spine. Okay, and let your head find the appropriate amount of support. Maybe you need to push the blanket back or roll it up a little bit at the neck. And this would be the one where you can roll the blanket at the neck for comfort, so the chin can gently tilt up. So this would be considered head above heart pose. Okay, so it's a nice beginning shape. And as the arms feel their movement, the extremities out, relax the hands and just feel the optimal direction of the breathing muscles and the alignment here for our spine in connection to the heart and the ribs. You can take your time, right? If you need to fuss a little bit, move the blocks further out. Sometimes you get lucky and it just meets the leg in the right position. And if you think about it, you shift it. The arms, though, are relaxed in the beginnings. So feeling the pull of the inhale through the nose. If you're lucky, you can breathe in through that chamber, that filter. And it directs the circulation of oxygen to the upper lobes of the lungs, right in through the nose. But it's not emergency breathing unless it's through the mouth. So you want to find inhale through your natural filter. And that weight on the abdominal zone, right, with sand. So feel if you can let the arms relax a little more so they don't have to be pushing so far out and beyond. They may soften a little bit closer towards the mat. They may still stay in this wide, open quality, feeling the bones in that shape. Shoulders back and down. So once you have the repetition of breath, and you no longer have to monitor it, it's automatic. Let's begin the process of movement with the shoulders. So I feel the shoulders kind of snug back towards the bolster. It's nice to have something they ought to reach to. But if you call a shoulder, right, you could point to the front, not always the back. So this is more the back space touches into the bolster. But feel what it's like when you stretch the arms back behind you. Right, I mean, I feel a little bit more holding on one bicep than the other. I mean, these are things that'll happen if my arms are lower than the shoulder height here, right? If I drop them back, which is convenient to have a bolster supporting my spine so I can offer that for my breathing muscles, but go slow, almost kind of irritatingly slow, be patient. And feel the hands stretch open. You can kind of feel the web of the palm and all of those connectors right into your arm layers, okay? So we don't really think of ourselves as having wings or something, I know, but, you know, kind of visualize, I'm thinking of a bat right now. It's October. It's a good time to think of that, huh? But I'm thinking of the connection, right, that they have right into these areas. So when you stretch back with the arms that connect towards the layer of the back, you're going to reach the hands up behind you, straight behind your head, and then either reach the hands to the elbows or together, okay? So hands could touch, interlace the fingers, turn the hands inside out, and kind of feel that movement of the wrist, okay? Or hold the elbows. Completely up to you, elbows or hands interlace. Or both. You could try them all. But as you find that direction of reaching, feeling how the ribs are kind of it's like a uni rib now, right? The arms collaborate, the ribs collaborate as one force. And in a slow practice, we're generating force with the full stretches, the deep reaches in the body. Now, if you have the elbows in a crisscross, change the crossing. You can do the same with the hands. I tend to just see if I can kind of wander a bit with my arms reaching back without holding, let them stretch out wide, and just feel movement with the arms. Okay, now as we let go of the grips of the hands, as we lower the elbows back down to the sides, take a slow in-breath. Feel the belly lift. And as you out-breath, just feeling that humanness of the heart and the connection down towards the vital organs. And you're just going to move any sand you have away. And now as we unbuckle, we loosen up the belt or we unbuckle it. And then we'll take the belt off. It doesn't have to go completely to the side yard. It can still stay on your mat, just not around your thigh or your feet. And then grasp the blocks so they're next to the thighs besides the mat, and walk the feet in just like one step at a time. You might wag your tail a little bit because that's where we're going. It's the hip backing. And then take a ball and place it to the upper outer left thigh. Okay, it could be kind of smooshed in towards like the lower border of the hip. I think this is one to explore, right? So even though this is a practical practice, we're trying to focus on, but focus on some of these arenas of that we really want to help, right? The hips. So as the left foot steps, the right ankle crosses to the left knee. So if I try to do this without movement of my lower back, it doesn't happen. So I have to give myself a little ease. So I just slide my tail a little bit down, then the ankle crosses to the left knee, the right ankle. And I just push the ball into the upper outer left hip and then lean the knees to the left. Okay, so I'll admit mine is right up at the hip, but it's not like my thigh has the ball. It's up high, it's right at the bone. The ball should feel soft enough to go against the bones. That's why these soft, squishy balls are so good. A tennis ball wouldn't be quite the same. So use the block under that left leg, especially if you're somewhat flexible and you tend to drop your leg to the floor. See if you can use that as kind of a bumper here. So the left hand reaches for the right knee. And I'm going to try to grasp onto my knee and guide the leg towards the left. Yep, actually this block is kind of a little too close in. So find where it's going to allow you to feel it still stretch into that right hip. If you decide it just feels kind of not the same depth, you probably slid too far down on the bolster. So you can always come back up, try it again, really use that arch of the spine, that design, to influence the upper support, and then hold the knee and draw the leg over to the left. So the right knee is being held by the left hand. Relaxing the arm on the right side, or you can stretch it back besides your head. They're both fine. Just in the moment, what's best for you. If you need more circulation feel, you can stretch the arm back. Okay, but relax the side of that left foot, right? If you're feeling like you're tightening through the foot, you might have to flex and relax through the side bone of the ankle. You relax the grip on the knee, bring the knee back center, grab the ball, all in one moment, and then place the ball under the right rear and roll into that right glute area. So we'll say glute areas. Okay. So wherever it feels pretty good to roll, you're going to let it be pressure plus movement across. So the hips are going to go side to side. This is the priority, is the hip movement, not the knee movement. So this might be a task for some of us, is to get the ball so it's at the right buttock and you're pushing into the ball. So lots of pressure and movement, side to side. That's what equals a massage. Think of it as pressure plus movement and glide across the musculature. So notice if you can feel where the muscle is in the glute. You know, we don't really feel that when we sit and we walk. Sometimes we feel it activated when we stretch, right? But this is a little different when you're massaging into it versus something like a lunge or a pigeon pose. We'll get to that today for sure. Okay. All right, now as we glide back through the center, you can place the ball, but it stays over here on the right side. Okay, upper outer right thigh right at the hip. So I have mine to the side of the rear. It's not under it though. Okay, left ankle crosses to right knee, knees to the right. I imagine the second side will feel a little different. And it could be the difference in how the ball applies pressure so that you have kind of a rebound effect here, little bounciness. And as you hold onto the left knee, just grasp a hold of it with your right hand and there's two variations, right? There's guiding the knee towards the right or drawing it towards your chest. So you want to do a blend of the two. And that can feel kind of tricky. So I miss having the arm stretching back. I kind of like this instruction. If you prefer the arm back out to the side, it's completely fine. Right? So you want to make the practice so it really allows you to use the pose to get into your body, not use your body to get into the pose, right? So really feeling the sensation of in-breath and then relax on the out-breath. Okay, now feel where, for me, I feel the left hip, but there's a kind of a mystery sensation about where the right outer border is next to the ball. I can still kind of feel a trickle effect of sensation there in the hip. I mean, it's not hip, I guess it's deep buttock muscles is what you're feeling, right? And that's kind of it's a little bit of a conundrum in there, right? Deeper buttock muscles and the attachments out into the rotators is complicated. It's like a rotator cuff is complicated. This is complicated, right? These areas that have lots of things latched over, muscles, smaller, deeper, all together in one spot. Okay. So relax your grip on the knee. And then just bring the knees back center and take the ball, kind of notice. So once I come back center, the stretch I felt from this, it disappears, right? Within just a moment. So I want to kind of remember, okay, where about was that? I'll put the ball there, right, to that left glute area. And as I just let my body weight lean into that left side to the ball, let's call it a side, but just the ball. And then you're going to press into it. You might just be, okay, my body weight is what it is, and it's going to push in the ball. I'm not going to resist the weight. In fact, I don't want to try to push and get my hips up off of the ball. I want to just trust it. Okay. So the trust on the ball is probably it's a challenge for all of us. The more you roll, though, it'll be easier. What I find interesting with these softer balls is to work with them like when you're standing up, you know, at a wall. It could be really helpful for your upper back to roll, for your neck. So there's other things you can do besides yoga stuff, you know, yoga poses per se. And you can also definitely be against the wall with it like this, same spot with the hip. Can be really quite interesting because you can step into your foot a little bit to nudge into the hip at the wall. Okay, so take a few more moments here. Okay, so what I mean by that, just so you have a little bit of an idea, that would be if you're standing, don't go right now, but you would get a feeling here, right? So you'd have that motion of the ball right next to your hip and you would push into your foot, of course, because you got to stand. So I like that a lot. Okay, I don't do it that often, but I'll see at the ball and I go, oh, that's what I can do right now. Okay, so as we come around, what I want us to do is get a little bit of this thread. So what I mentioned in the beginning was that we have this core kind of vine. So take the ball, place it between the knees, and then squeeze. And I want you just to kind of keep that heat into the adductor, so that the leg pits have this pressure. So the pressure might be closer to the knee. It might not feel like you can really feel that control further in towards the pelvic floor, but it activates it regardless, right? Because your glutes are awake, your hips are awake. So I want you just to feel that squeeze of the ball. That's it. You don't have to levitate or come into a sit-up or anything. Okay. No levitation required today. Phew. Okay, so relax the grip and then place the ball somewhere to the side. And you're going to roll and come into sleeping sage minus sand. If you are a sand enthusiast and just feel like you need to have it on this pose, resist the urge to do more. We had the thighs kind of pressing, we had movement. So now you're in what's a beginning of a twist. So you have the left thigh resting, but it's in half a lotus pose, right? My thigh just go from this, like windshield wiper kind of thing. Lean, keep the bolster the same, the stack up, and then just take the hands pressing, lift the chest. So you get a little squeeze into your spleen, right? Twist a little bit into the liver. And then as you lift up, kind of obnoxiously so, lifting your vision up. Okay. And then stretch the waist down onto the props. You can hug your bolster, let your head turn to the right. And this is sleeping sage pose. So I just relax the brain. Just let the back open up. And that right leg can either stay reaching back. I like to kind of stack my right inner leg on my left foot. And some prefer the legs just stacked together in more of a fetal position. Okay, the feet can be however they're comfortable. Okay, so as we reach with the lower bones in that twist, so the lower bones are in the twist, the hip, the lower back. But here's where the bolster helps out my lower back. So I don't want to twist my lumbar spine. So if I reach back to the very base of my spine, that should have a natural curve right now. And all the twisting action comes into the ribs. So if you need more padding under your head, like it's too much of a twist, you can always make this higher under your head. This is appropriate. That would be okay. If you want to fold it up again, or if you want to put like a block under your bolster, something extra that would bring it up to you, you might find that's almost too easy, but hey, if it's comfortable, you go with it. Okay, but get a feel for spine in its rotation. Relaxing the face. And relaxing the breath. Okay, scanning where the twist occurs in your abdominals, right? Do you feel it below the heart in the twist, or is it mostly in that upper rib space, spanning open? So we want to repeat this on the second side. So we're going to go right into that second side, nothing kind of filling the space in between. So when you press into your palms, let your chin tuck in towards your chest. Okay, and then just let your chin just gently reach forwards. Okay, now feel how you design the twist. Like this was the setup this is the first side still. So I want to repeat this and replicate it as well as I can on the second, knowing second sides have differences. So I'm just going to bring my hands towards my knees and swing back away from the bolster and then go to the other side. So I'm sure I have habits, right? I might twist a little more on one vertebrae than the other if I was analyzing everything, but keep kind of the basics. So the basic place of form that you might feel is your hips, okay? So when I lean on this side, I just turn to the bolster. I've got my right thigh resting down. My right hip is right next to the short end of the bolster. And then the goal of getting your belly button on the bolster is so-so. I don't think it's the most important part because that's going to feel like it's most connected to the lumbars, right? And that's not where we want to keep the big twist at all. So I would say, feel how the chest lifts. Let the abdominals touch down so you feel that liver press down. Of course, this side has different organs, so it probably does feel a little different. There's just maybe more stuff on the right side. Liver is bigger. Other side has variations of organs. You're not going to make them up today, but when you lean down, you just want to let there be pressure into that liver. And then your focus is on massaging into it with breath, not doing any more difficult pressures into it, just simply the bolster. And let your head turn to the left and relax your face. You certainly could have your hands reaching out versus holding the bolster. That's no problem. Some of us might prefer the arms in more of a goalpost position. And some might like to hold on to the bolster. Now start to slide the left thigh close to the right. They're already close enough, huh? But enough that you can maneuver the palms down and come around to just the knees supported, maybe by a blanket. It's up to you. If you like extra comfort. Sometimes we're on a space we don't really need that, but I do want you next to the wall with your feet. So your feet should be able to touch the wall and the blanket under the knees. And we'll take the bolster across the mat, just horizontal. And we're going to add a couple blocks under the hands. I would have them so they're at the lowest setting, because even this for a hand is going to be small. But I want you to find that you have a little more lift, like you've got a longer spine. We're going to pretend this. And this is what props are good for. They just bring the floor up to you. So it's easier to get onto the floor. And it's easier on the wrist, right, with a block. They do make blocks that have kind of a curve on them. I don't know if you've seen those, but they're a little easier on the wrist as well. I think I have one over here to show you. Okay, I have my notes. But yeah, they have blocks that have this contour. These are kind of neat for the wrist, right? So these have been made now. So as more people are doing yoga later on, right? So there are ways to do that. Or you could just, I guess you could work on your blocks and form them into that. So feet touch. Now they don't have to be the heels on. I just have the balls of the feet at the wall. It'll come in handy in a little bit. But first things first, just arch the spine. Okay, feel the heel of the hand on the block. That's key. And then round the back. You want something firm under the hands. You don't want to have like a blanket. That's actually, there's a whole story on that with the wrists. So you don't want something that's, you're going to actually be losing the support. So round the back and in breath, breathing as you motion the spine. I think of this as one breath per movement. Okay, now as you come back through that cat pose, walk the hands a little further forward on the blocks, or push the blocks a little further forward. I'm going to do that. And then come into a lift of the chest, lengthen the front line like an upward facing dog. And just see if you can feel your feet. Your knees could bend a bit. They don't have to be straight legs here. That's not very helpful. We want to have the curve, because you can feel how your quadricep has that nice curve pattern. It kind of feels like a shield, quadriceps do, I think. When you touch onto them, hopefully they're not breakable, but When we reach and feel that curve, we've got the bolster cushion, and then we come on back to table, and then come into downward dog. Now you could have your blocks under your hands. You could bring them a little closer to your bolster, or you could go minus, because most of us are used to this without a block. But make sure your blocks are on a surface that's not going to slide. So I know some of you practice maybe without a mat. You have to be a little careful on that, huh? So if you're blockless right now, you're going to go without them. I just love the blocks for any of those poses. But if you're going without, maybe you move your bolster in so your arms are going to be supported by the bolster, and then lifting up my heels at the wall. I'm not going to try to get my heels down. I focus on the length in my back. If I push my heels down, it kind of shortens the angle in my hip. Okay, so you kind of maybe don't notice this sometimes, but having them up, right, is going to allow me to put some different weight into my feet. But it's up to you. Okay, look at the knees, right? If they're going a little inwards, kind of like an X direction, right? They're inwards. Step the feet a little further out. You can always play with taking the leg up the wall if you decide that's going to be fun, or just stay with the simple reversing the flow back to the heart and the brain. This is head below the heart. Head nods a little side to side. Walk the feet all the way towards the blanket on the edge, not on the blanket. Walk the hands back towards the feet, and then let your sitting bones press towards the wall, and let the arms dangle or hold the elbows. So taking forward fold, head lower than the heart. Yeah, this is a good one to explore, just kind of movement of the sitting area, lengthening. Right. The seat is a pretty kind of boxed up area in our daily habits. So if anything, practice is getting you out of all those habits and finding some new ones with these parts. Okay, the back line lengthens, lower back releasing, head releasing down. Okay, release the hold of the elbows. Maybe kind of move your shoulders, shake them out, bend the knees. This is a good standing child's pose when you clutch the back of the leg. So if you want like child's pose, but not how it feels on your knees, this is a standing child's pose. We just clutch the back of the legs. We have that nice stretch in the back, but there's no pressure on my knees. Okay. All right, now come forward. Careful, you need hands. Okay, walk on forward so the hands are on the mat. You're going to lower down through the knees. And let's take a simple locust pose. So we'll turn our bolster lengthwise. And I want you to walk the hands far forward of the bolster at the top sides. And then as you reach your hips down on top and the waist stretches. Okay, door number one would be that the elbows are by the sides, the hands are down on the floor, chin is reaching forward. Once you lower your head, it's hard to get it back up in the right alignment. So just stay with how well you're doing with your upper spine. And then feel if you can push your feet into the wall and stretch your arms back besides the legs. This is our best back strengthener, core strengthener as well, right? So my glutes kind of wake up again. My feet have to push into the wall to support my lower back. So if you do baby back bends for back care, try using a wall at your feet to keep that circulation strong in the lower back. It has some resistance and tone in the glutes, which support my back. Okay. So lower down, breathe again. It only helps. And then as you come forward, move your elbows down into Sphinx pose and simply find what's comfortable for you with your neck. It might be to have your head turn side to side. It might be to have your chin relax down. Feel your head turn from side to side from here. To take the final few moments now, relax the rear muscles. Okay, let the knees fully bend so the heels draw up and a little closer towards the seat. And the knees are going to go center and the feet will go side to side. Cobra moving its tail, right? This is a version of Cobra, a restorative version. Okay. So feeling now our body line coming up into the side abdominals, we're going to just slide the hands back, come up, and get your blankets all on this side of your bolster. So let's go ahead and turn the bolster across horizontal again, and then shift onto your left hip. And we did some kind of variation of getting into this movement in our hip bones here. But now we're going to take it so we reach over through the side, okay? So take a block or two. I'm a fan of a couple of them for this. 2 blocks, I just stack them up. Move it over to the block stack to the right side of what you're looking back behind your blankets. And then you're gonna need a ball and a sandbag. Okay, all right. So let's get all those things over near the left knee. And as I stretch the right side lengthwise, I want to take the ball to the inside of the right knee. Lean in. Now, having that instruction to have your hip near the bolster is fine, but you don't need to push the thigh up to the bolster. See what happens when you get onto actually the whole structure is on its side. So find what happens first to lean in, then to get your sand maybe on your bolster first. Take it slow. Blanket stacked. I got a couple in quarter folds. And then I just put the sand on I think the hip is a good direction just because of weight bearing, right? I want to find that support for my bones. I'm going to sand the hip. It's pretty easy to do. And it probably won't fall off like if you put the sand on your side. But up to you. If you love having the sand up here and you just enjoy feeling your respiratory muscles in that area move, right? It's obvious they get movement when there's sand on them too. You can do that. So sand is hip or side. And then as my right arm reaches to the blocks, I'm going to have to push them a little bit back. You can put your hand on a block or a chair. Okay, a chair is probably better to be honest, because it's pretty easy to put your hand onto a chair seat and not move stuff around. But as you feel that reach, that kind of slinky side, noticing what's occurring with the knees, right? So for me, I have to be a little cautious of my right knee when I stretch the leg back. And so if my hip is dropping back, like my right hip is pushing behind me, it's not good on my knee whatsoever. So this would be something where sometimes I'll see someone start to drop their hip back, but they just go with the sand. So you might have to get the sand so it's not going to push your hip behind you. Okay, you want it right on the side, perfectly on the side. You don't want to push your knee in either. That's kind of a specific hip position. Okay, and let the spine stretch. Side sage pose. Left arm is definitely not on a blanket or a bolster. It's in between. It's in the notch between the two. Just let the weight of your head completely relax. Breathing slow. Just scanning where that right hip is, just basically hip, right side, and then where it contours around to the rear, okay? We're going to keep moving through that right leg and extending it out when we come up to sit. So I want you just to notice, if you can, right, the side band of the right thigh, the side of the leg, where it latches into the hip, and the form around to the rear. And you don't probably feel your glute muscles much on this one. the front hip muscles. You feel the hip flexor. Okay, let's relax the pressure with that right hand. So we're going to start to kind of make our way up. And let's do it kind of, thoughtfully with the prop. So if you got a block set that you've been using here, just kind of start to move it down near your bolster side. So we'll need it. You can move one behind you carefully with your shoulder. Okay, now we move the sand off to the right. And then I try to let my chest open, but I'm careful. I'm just moving my upper rib spaces to twist, not my lumbar spine. And then as I move back to the left rib cage, I come up and I'm going to pull the blankets in so they're right next to my bolster. We are going to use these blankets to support us if you do pigeon pose, but if you like to do that pose with less blankets, you can always go down to one. We'll tackle that when we get there, but if some of you like to make it perfectly prepped, you can always go down to one blanket behind you. So come on up to sit, and this right leg that we just had turned this way, we're going to take it, we're going to shift it around. So what we had moments ago, the analyst today, is we had the glute muscles and it was stretching the hip flexor, right? So now we're going to turn the leg a little bit by stretching it out to the right. Okay, and then I'm going to find my props here. Sand on left thigh. Ball. I'm going to use it under my right knee because it's a responsive surface, right? My knee likes a little support. The block is good too under the knee, but I'm just loving the ball thing. Sometimes the smaller balls that you can get now, they're a couple inches smaller than these, and they're circumference, and those can work really good too. So if yours is too big, you don't want to have it all pumped up either, right? So if it's starting to lose some air, that's probably good. So sand, I'm going to use a block under my knee. You don't have to. You could have your knee touching down. Okay. What good that does you is maybe you feel like you got the mobility, but I like to position so my hip, my center of my hips, I don't want this to drop because my right leg extends out, supported. So if you look down at the thighs, they should be kind of level, right? You don't have one that far down than the other, okay? Now take a belt and place it under that right foot. Reach into it, maybe bend the knee, lasso in the right foot. Hold on to the belt with the right hand. The right leg is out to about 2 o'clock. That would be optimal. Okay, when I pull, I'm activating right armpit chest area, gets a little bit of pull. And then I'm going to go to that next side stretch, right? So I'm going to bend through the right elbow. I try to bend and do a little bit of rotation for my spine by using my upper extremity. So as I hold, then I take that twist into my upper back, right? Not my lumbar, right? This area, if I put my knuckles into that area, it's definitely lengthening, right? Now as the left arm stretches over the left side of the face, keep that reach through the left side. And you definitely want to let your head turn to the right. And if it seems too much for you to pull with the belt, you don't have to use the belt. You can use a block besides the right leg. Just position it so it's at the second or the third height setting and lean into the block instead of your belt hold. So both are fine. Now that I tell you, once you got all rung up into the belt, huh? So reach with the left arm, turning, breathing. It's a side stretch. It's a little bit of a twist. Side abdominals. Okay, let the left arm relax behind your back. Definitely keep it with that. Relax the right foot. If you're holding with the belt, maybe kind of let go of that a little bit. I love the block besides the leg. Okay. And now, kind of feel for that left side body, how it has its reach, right? So if I have my hand to my back area, when I come up, probably holding your side would be useful. I think having some resistance helps us basically fire off some of these muscles that are dormant. And then sometimes when we do things, right, we pull our back or things like that. So keep it together, right? Notice that if you touch to that side and you lift up, you can push down that seam of that left side of the back into the QL. You can push that down the length of the muscle and then come up. And then bring the right hand to the left knee and left hand back. I suppose having all the blankets is nice because you have enough height under your hand. But you can also put a block back here. So even if it's right now and you think, oh, I can't change it up, you sure can. You can put a block back here, hold on with that right hand to the left knee, lift the chest. A lift of the chest doesn't have to be tiring, right? It can be just simply inhaling and the sternum is up. Okay, relax the grip with the right and left hand, and then we're going to come into pigeon pose of choice. So some of you are going to be fine with this deeper knee bend, stretching that right leg back. So place the belt to your side, the ball to the side, as well as the sand. And I'll show a version with the block in front of you and a version of typical pigeon pose. So the leg is kind of set up, the left knee is out. So I'm just going to lean into my left hip and stretch my right leg back, and then position my hands down and come down onto my elbow. Some of you have different kind of explorations you'll do in pigeon. Some will stretch over to the right, stretch out to the hip a little more. Some will come up, and some will go to sleeping pigeon. Okay, so this is a basic pigeon pose restoratively with a bolster. Okay, those of you that find, nope, not going to do that, then you will be here with your left foot on top of a block at the lowest setting under your left foot, and you could be minus any props, but maybe a ball under your right knee, and you'll simply tilt forward. Right, you can tell this might be a little easier on some people's knees, backs, coordinating the muscles. It's kind of simple forward fold. So if you're trying to stretch your hip, but you can't do like a pigeon pose, or that's just not where you're going to attempt to move, you can always sit on your bolster, put a block in front, and put your foot on top. And simple cross-legged. Okay, this is pretty good. Some people will find that coming into this, they'll try to round their back a lot, thinking that's going to improve the hip, but I don't see where that's going to help out any of our structural, integrity. I don't think that will help it. So it might feel like a deeper hip stretch, but try to work on refining that lift in the lumbars. Okay, you can let your head relax a bit, but those of us in regular pigeon, which it's easier to work your spine in regular pigeon, right? You have your elbows down. So just the crawl shape of our body when our hands are below, our knees are back somewhat here. It's just so much easier on our spine. It just hands down, hands down. It's easier on my back if I'm on the crawl position. Okay. Now come on up. Let's come on up and go to our next sage pose. So back into the left hip, come around, and then down in front of your bolster, sit in front, turn to the right, and place your blocks if you're using them at all, or if you have a chair, you can use the seat of the chair for your hand, or a stool, or maybe, I don't know if you'd be near a couch for this, that'd be a lot, but so left leg has the ball. I place it on the inside of the left knee, and I then take my sand to the outer left hip. Okay. Arm between the bolster and the blankets. Got barely enough room there. Okay, and as I reach overhead, yeah, it's nice to kind of see what happens when you just try to guide into the second side without everything perfectly set. See what happens when you get the bones into the setting, the situation, we'll call it here. But the contour of your right hip bone, right, you're putting just the right amount of weight into that right hip. Yeah, don't deny the weight into the bones. If you can tolerate that weight with sand, that might be good for you, not required. And as you feel that left arm reaching, relax the neck. And here's where I'm consciously focusing on that my hip flexor, right? The quadricep, the psoas is receiving an extension, right? It receives reach. Daily, it's folding and hinging. And, you know, maybe you don't have arthritis in this area, maybe it's in a different spot. I mean, not to say that you have any of that, but these are areas, right? That's where inflammation goes, is in the joints. So we're trying to get some stretch in these areas that get constant one direction over and over, right? Sitting, hinging. So I want you to stretch the front of that thigh. And if it's a tough one for your knee joint to push the foot back, I get it. I feel that too. What I have to do is let the inside of that left thigh rest on the ball. And really work with that reaching through the left arm. And I'm finding myself leaning back. I gotta be careful. Part of it's to connect to you, but you don't want to roll back with the hip. It's okay to isolate your ribs and roll them. It's great. But if you find your hip rolling back, it's going to pull the knee. So you want to keep on that right hip. A few more breaths. Okay, now release first the sand. Okay, and then this side, I think we have maybe a better perspective on how we get into the next wave. So we lean to the right hip, kind of know where we're going. We come on up, we sit, we let the left leg stretch out. We can place the sand on the right thigh. We can get our blocks. We can tuck the blankets in to the bolster right back in. And we can use, I like the block besides my leg versus the belt under my foot, I'll be honest. But you can see the rationale behind having a belt, right? Because you'll reinforce the whole leg. So if you feel like you can physically feel the leg reach to the left to about 10 o'clock, you don't need a belt. But if you feel like, well, that was helpful, I like the belt, you can use a little reach, right? You can bend the knee, scoop up the foot. It's practice time, right? It's not like I've got to be a performer on this. I'm just trying to figure it out. I've been in this body for a while, but I'm still trying to figure it out. So as I hold, I have my sand on my right thigh is indicated, and this is another way to focus is you start with the turn to the right. Careful that if you were to touch that low back, that you still feel that good arch there. That's key. Right? I don't want to twist in here in my lower back. Like I almost want to brace there, so I'm not going to turn. But I'm going to turn above that in the thoracic vertebrae. Take a breath. Do something so you can feel those ribs puff up. And then you're going to hold and lean to the left. So maybe walking down the belt is good. Right? It's kind of instructive, right? So you go, okay, I got the belt. I'm moving my fingers down. Let my fingers do the walking. Okay, then the right arm can go up or back. You don't have to keep it in the sky. So this is where I like this block. I like the block under my elbow. But you can see how someone could tilt their waist too far down on this. So you might need your block higher up. Then I have a little more gain in my ribs. It's all about helping your circulation, not about how you look or how far you seem to think you're getting. My left foot should not turn in. It likes to start to do that. Flex it, keep it up. And then the right arm soars over the right side of the face. Breathing. It only helps. Yeah, the right thigh, my right knee is trying to reach down. I might put a block under it now, but it seems pretty comfortable. But you can tell how props under the knees could be nice. Right arm behind your back now. Keep the ribs lifting and contouring. Okay, and come on up. See if you can work on in-breath to lift you, out-breath to twist you, and left hand to the right knee. You get a block under mine. Okay, and that's kind of a nice basic thought about twists. In-breath to lift you, out-breath to twist you. Okay, I think that's a good one. I like that. There's an idea behind on your exhale, right? The intercostals, right? They'll expand on in-breath, exhale, contract, and then you have more room to move and twist. Okay, try it for yourself. And now when you feel that rotation, try to reach through the left foot. Don't forget you've got one of those. I got one left foot. Okay, my left foot. Okay, now with that pulley pattern, it's pretty cool what arms can do for the core. One arm's going to go this direction, one arm's going to pull this direction, and then you strengthen through the spine. It can only happen, right? That you can strengthen between the in the vertebral column here. Okay, now as you come back center, or where you think it is, right in the front, take the sand off. If you're using it, take a pigeon pose. If you don't move the left leg behind you, don't worry, right? There's an option. So you're either going to let the right knee lower on the ground and the left leg stretch back, okay? That's variation one. Or, and this could have elbows down, it could hands on the blocks. You could walk your hands towards the left. Man, there's options, right? But another one is that seated forward. I hate to say the word fold. I don't want you to fold in half here, but you can move your block around with your right foot, place your foot on top, and then take that seat of reaching of the spine. Yeah, all you have to do is look at a spinal column, like a visceral one, if you have access to that, and just go, wow, it really looks good when it has its curves. But it looks like its basic nature is to have all these, the upper, the middle, the base are all different vertebrae, right? They're not the same buddies, right? One is one kind, one is the other kind. So you want to keep the lower vertebrae plump, hydrated. Those should be your thick ones that support the whole stack of them. So keep it arched. And if you're in the pigeon pose, right, with the leg back, you're going to keep that arch, especially if you've got this bolster under your hips. So let's take a few more moments here. Okay. Oh my, I've got a list of things here. I'm halfway through my list, but I think we're going to have to decide. Well, we have to get inverted next. That's important. So feel where the weight is in leg bones. And as you begin to come out of this one, I want you to let your spine, like kind of feel for the front of the spine, right? That's going to be behind the heart. Right? It might have a bit of work to do to get back up. So if you're forward folding like this, you're going to work your way back with your weight in your left hip. And if you're seated, you don't have any problems coming out of that. You're just going to sit back on your bolster, under your tush. You're going to take a blanket away, and then you're just going to basically drop back. Okay. So I've got my blocks to the sides. I don't think we're going to need these for right now. So let's put those away on the side. Let's have our sand in case, but we especially need the belts. Okay. Ball and belt. Sand maybe. Okay. So as I lower back, I've got my tailbone right at the edge of the bolster. I think most of us have one of these hugger mugger bolsters. If you have like a wider bolster, you might not need to follow that as specifically as us with bolsters that aren't as big. But the density is what matters for the bolster. I think like firm. You really want a good cotton battings of your bolster so it doesn't smush as much. So as you are lowering back, you decide, okay, do you want to be further down or further up? It certainly should be okay on your back muscles. Okay, so I got my blanket right under the base of my my cranium, right? So I'm not putting the blanket under my shoulders. That's a big no-no. And so I have it, a little below my occiput. If I touch to the side of my ears, it's right below there. And then I'm going to take my belt and make a big loop, like bigger than the last one. So whatever I measured last time is not going to work here, but I'm going to buckle it up and scoop up my feet. Yeah, and then let the feet push out. So I just bring the tail of the belt down and loosen that up a little. And maybe it doesn't have to be that much bigger. Maybe that's too much, but yeah, that's too much. But where do you know, right? Well, if your legs are shaking, it's too much. It's just not going to work, right? You don't want your nervous system to get all fried up here. So if I push out, I can feel where the back of the pelvis is kind of a funny back pelvis feeling because most of our day, the pelvis is it's pushed in this way. In a lot of our poses, it is too. So this is this unusual. And the focus bit for this is your vascular system. It's not like you have to have all this flexibility and that's the key. It's that you're reversing the effects of gravity on the heart. So, hey, if your feet are closer, that's completely fine because the key is that I've got my legs lifted and I have a little separation because at the end of class, we bring them together. So we want variety. But I like to circle my feet a little bit with this one lately. I don't think I did that before very often, but I just like some variation with it. Feeling that reach of my feet, the bones and those lower parts. Okay. And they do feel like two kind of globs at the bottom of you sometimes, even though there's more bones in those spots than any other part of the body, right? Except the hands. But, feeling for what they're worth upside down, helping your heart. It's great to have feet in this position for my heart health, for my lymph drain. So as you have the arms stretching open, or maybe you don't, maybe you like to hold your belt. Some people prefer this. They just feel more secure, and that's fine. So take a few moments. Let's take about another 5 rounds of breath. Whether the feet are still, whether they're moving, and just noticing where the circulation is in the abdominals. It's a natural stretch in the core. You don't even really have to put energy into the abdominal strength here. If you've done this for a while, it's already strengthening in that zone. It's just something you need to repeat often, right? I always notice this when I work with someone brand new to it, that it's hard to even get here, even to get on a bolster and bring legs up. So if you're fine with that now, just know it was a step you took and you are able to access that strength in your lower back, your lower core. So just let the knees bend, reach up for the belt closest to you and slide the feet to each other. Take the belt so that you're going to bring your palms together. So if the buckle bugs you, because it does for me, I like to just move it a little over to the side and then bring the palms together. So the webbing between the thumb and the index finger is basically what's holding the belt. If this hurts your wrist for any reason, then don't do it. You can bring the palms together and the belt's at the wrist, okay? So for everyone's got different hand stuff, right? So left leg stretches down, right leg reaches back. And I'm not going to use a sandbag on this one today. Just feel it for what it's worth for the hamstring. Hamstring 101. Do you feel your hamstring? Do you feel your calf? Maybe. And notice if it's the side of the back of the leg, if it's right in the middle, where you're feeling that circulation in the leg. And then I want you just to simply push the foot away from your upper body forward, like straight up to vertical. Slide the left foot in. Okay, feel as that left foot touches, you're gonna let your tailbone just press to the bolster and then bring the left foot up into the belt and switch sides. So right foot down. Your leg could stay with the bottom of the foot on the floor, sole of the foot down. You could slide your foot down. All these little things of curiosity, I think, are huge, right? So the smaller movements, again, it's not like you're trying to get the most explosive stretch in your hamstring, but likely one side receives it different. For me, this side, it feels more of a full leg reach and feels pretty complete. And the other side, I felt kind of site-specific sensitivity. And it's my dominant leg, so likely I got some habits over there to work on, huh? Habits to help out through my shapes here in the practice to support easing. So let the right foot slide in. And this time I want you to simply push the left foot back up to vertical. Bring the hands down towards your heart. And then grasp the belt with your right hand. The left leg is being held, the left foot. Let the right knee release open and cross the left leg over. Just give it kind of a flash of stretch. These are just seconds. I don't want us to spend a lot of time because we're going to do the deep hip crossover in a few moments at the end. Okay, now bring the left leg back up. Switch the sides, right foot comes up. Straight, as straight up as you think it is, right? Hold on to the belt with your left hand. Be careful of the bottom leg. I already got in the habit. I've got to bend the knee, put the foot down, and then when I cross the leg over, I'm safer with my knee and my hip joint. So if my left leg was straight, it would crank on my lower back just a bit much. So just notice all the curve and bendings you can do. Right arm is open. Help out all these levers. These levers that end up in the joints, and again, that can be inflammatory areas. So remember, motion is lotion. So good for us. Okay, breathe to bend. Come back in the center and slide the belt off your foot. And we're going to bring the knees in towards the chest. And I want you to push your bolster away from underneath. Mine just swept away there. Okay, now I want you to slide your bolster down to your wall. If you find that now you have no back support, you're going to just scoot a little bit down towards the wall. Okay, so how far should I go? Well, what I want you to feel is you can push into the bolster that's against the wall. So if you find that you can barely put the bottoms of the feet on, half of the bolster, you just go a little further towards it. And then we're going to push we'll place a ball between the knees first. Again, access the bolster with your feet. Blanket could be a little lower than this probably. Right, I don't want to have too much roundness in my cervical spine. And lift up your hips and stretch the arms overhead. Hips lift up. Okay, lower down through the spine, vertebrae by vertebrae, spinal column lowers. Hands besides the hips. Feel the arch of the back in breath. And exhale, lift the hips up, arms overhead. Let the spine lengthen down. Slowly releasing through the tail. Let's do 2 more, however many more you like to do. If it feels like it's an exercise and you're doing it because we're counting it, then just 2 more. But if you like the little bit of motion you get between the shoulder blades down the spine, this is a good one to practice anytime for your back care. What I find this is even better is if I do have my feet at the wall and I lift and lower. Okay, but the bolster is kind of reasonable. Okay, the wall you can slip and slide. So as you lower down through the spine, let's bring the knees to the chest and place the ball at the left buttock and roll into the glutes. I want you to go side to side, hips. So as you go across, make sure the ball isn't too high up. mine is too high. You want it kind of in the meaningful tissues, right? Your lower back has had plenty of motion, right? You don't need to recruit that area with the pressure. You want to find where it's on the glute. And that's going to be such a strong muscle, it's going to defy it probably. So press and just glide across. Tease the tissue, get some hydration in these tight areas. Yeah, they're normally clenched up areas, right? A glute is a clenched up area, right? In the nervous system, when it's having a challenge, that's an area that clenches up. It's one of the areas, the groins, other areas. So this is an area that you want to try to just roll across it. Okay, then go to the other side, keep it simple. Cross over, make sure the ball is really at the rear, not at the back, not too high up and not too low, and not right in the middle between the two rears, right? You want it over on one side to move into the glutes. Hips go side to side. Make sure it's hip movement, like you're moving your tail, you're wagging your tail. Okay, now as you lower down, you're going to move the ball to the left again. You're going to kick the bolster to the right side of your mat and take your crossover. Yeah, these last three poses, I actually really like this series at the end. I do this often in this class. It's the only thing you can kind of expect is much of the time we're going to do these three complete finishing touches. So when you cross over with the left hip and the leg on the bolster, you only have the leg on the bolster, right? You don't have your hip on it. But you might put a sandbag across the outer left hip. Okay. We did something like this earlier when we had the leg swing in the other range, but now it's in the range it's used to. It's hinging at the hip crease, but we're trying to stretch across. And if it's too much back pressure, you can always put the sand just on the hip bone, not near the thigh, or no sand. Okay. It will stretch the back. So as the right leg at the bottom just bends comfortably, I just let the chest stay open and receive the breath. And just keep the simple cycle of attention in the lower extremities and relax the heart. Now with the left arm stretched straight back behind you. Maybe feel the right hand at that sandbag or just above the side of the left knee. So kind of feel that clearing of that left hip, kind of the final crossover on the left side. Complete stretch. Belly moves with the breath, left elbow lowers down, slide the sand off the left hip, move the ball. Some people, this doesn't do a lot, having the ball at the sacrum, some like that, so it's up to you. And then windshield wiper the knees side to side. Remember, it's knee movement over hip movement on windshield wiper. So just cross them over. All right, maybe they hit each other. And then as you come to the other side, bolster left, you're going to swing the right leg on the bolster. So it's going to feel like you're just kind of moving into a fetal position. But the difference is that your arm is going to open on that right side. So you want to have your upper back completely onto just flat resting. You don't want to have the upper back curling to the left. So that, I think, is a challenge for some of us. And after you've done this a while, it's not even a thought at some point. But we want to achieve that openness of the right arm out to the side. That probably could be the most interesting part of it. This hip part is kind of clear. Sand on the outer right thigh, that exterior. So you're fulfilling the interior needs on the hip. And as your head turns to the right, you really get a nice dose of slow, deep breathing here. Really complete your practice with that in the last two poses. So when your ribs feel that turn, your head rolls to the right and you breathe slow. All the way up the spine, there's movement from the tail, through the mid-back, the twist, through the upper back, the turn of the neck. Now let's merge it all together for unifying that flow back to the brain. So we'll move the sand and the ball, whatever goes first, onto the side. Push the sand, just to nudge it down towards your wall space. And then be easeful for the back. You're going to roll left to the shoulder, push into your hands one at a time to slide back towards the wall, and bring a blanket that's in a good quarter fold. So I would have your blanket support so that you have it. Sometimes I'll do this with the blanket lengthwise under my back. So I'll just place it next to the bolster like this. I don't know. I just kind of like this old school version. I'm kind of stuck with this. But if you want to have a little more chest opening, you can try it. You can always try it. Okay. And you can also have the blanket like this and then put your other blanket on the end where your head goes. You might find it interesting. Okay, we're kind of changing a season, so maybe it's good to shift some of these things up. But for the moment, we're going to basically get our legs up the wall. Sit on the edge of your bolster and swing the legs upside down. And nudge the waist so that you have this length in the core. What's so great about this, I think, is that this lift of the legs is entering that lymph drain. So if I have my legs up and I put a little weight on the feet, that can be an extra influence on that circulation drain, like speed it up. But sometimes having no sand is fine too. So don't feel like you even have to do that. If you feel like, oh, it's kind of, this feels clunky to get it there, or just not your thing right now, you can always go minus sand. If you want the legs up the wall, but sandless makes it so they kind of don't stay together, you could just take your belt and tie a bow and then they'll stay together. There's all kinds of ways to get this to work. My hips are not, they're on the bolster, but my seat is not exactly at the wall. And I'm very content with that. My emphasis, however, though, is to feel like my tailbone is just resting into the bolster. Okay, arms go to cactus position and just the right amount of support for my neck. If you want to add a blanket on top of your core or an eye pillow across the eyes, you want to let this shape be where you're gathering your attention on receiving wellness from the cumulative effect of the poses today. Letting the eyes relax back into the brain and just simply receiving and letting go. Opening the ribs with the breath. Breathing through the nose. Belly fills and relaxes back towards the spine. Now feel how the legs start to move a little bit. So bending, feel the crease of the knees, just the slightest amount, then move your feet away from the wall. Okay, as you bend the knees even further, you're going to reach up to the sand and take that away. And you might bring the knees to your chest just to hug the back of the upper thigh towards the, right in the center of the back of the legs. And that pressure goes to the upper lung, right? Upper back is lung. So if you can breathe well when there's pressure on the upper lung, just noticing. Especially when we come up to sitting, just feel the difference when you're pushing into the lung. We're getting all that heat, that circulation into that space. Wake it up. And then you can stay in this hugged position for a little longer. It's all up to you. But as you go side to side, a little bit of rocking, a lot of stretch in the back, huh? And then roll to the side and let your hips get a feel of that movement across from the low back into the hip. And then really get as cannonball as you can. And then you're going to roll into your shoulder and then come on up. Take a seat, get a feel of your hip bones down, your knees out. Bring the hands to balance, one to the next in front of your heart center. And let's place a moment of attention to our practice, to the wellness we receive for yourself and for your community. Take a deep breath in to that space inwards and exhale, bowing into the space.